Before my last question, I do want to raise something that's not necessarily climate related, but it is very much in the news, at least in our hemisphere, the Western hemisphere. And that is what's happening with Venezuela, and specifically what's been happening the last few weeks, even the last few days, with the, what would we call it, a referendum that was held about possibility of encroaching on sovereign space in Guyana. I'm not sure how many people in this region have really focused on that, but it is something that's very newsworthy, and I'd just love to have your views on
it's a very important question, Conrad, because Guyana is a country that has basically a size almost similar to Ecuador, with an 800,000 people population, and it is seated in a reservoir of oil of more than 11 billion barrels of oil. And most of them are offshore, but there are also onshore assets to be identified. And they have a region that is called the Esequibo, which is the equivalent of 40% of the size of that country. And for a long time, there has been a dispute with Venezuela, but the fact is that Guyana has exercised sovereignty in the Esequibo for the last 100 years or so. And all of a sudden, a dispute that was supposed to be managed in the International Court of Justice was tried to be solved in a brutal way by Nicolas Maduro, who's the dictator that runs Venezuela, because he said, okay, let's take the Esequibo, so let's take 40% of the control of Guyana. So he called a referendum with a biased electoral system where a minority of people voted, and next day he comes and says, well, now this is the new map of Venezuela. And next day he comes and says, okay, I'm asking all the officials to start granting rights of oil exploration in the Esequibo region. And yesterday, President Ali from Guyana gave a marvelous speech telling his people, we're going to defend our sovereignty with all our energy. And why this is so worrying is because it's the same pattern that Vladimir Putin had with Ukraine. Same pattern. In this case, it's also a dictatorship trying to invade the territory of a smaller country that is a democracy. And I just don't understand why there has been such a silence from the European Union, such a silence from the UN Security Council, and maybe why there hasn't been a categorical statement from the United States government, because actually what Maduro is doing, he's violating the UN Charter. He's violating the Democratic Charter of the Americas, and I think we have to put a lot of attention, and we have to put all the pressure possible so that we don't see a bloodbath triggered by the desperate dictatorship of Nicolas Maduro.
Thank you, President, and it is truly reprehensible.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'm going to let one last question, again, going back